Hi, my name is Trevor Klee, and this is how to score 175 on your LSAT. I scored a 175 on my own LSAT. I started at probably 160 until 175. This is how I studied. It's also partially how I wish I studied because I did some stupid stuff in the beginning. But if I had studied the right way, this is what would have happened. So let's talk about first, how you prepare for it. Well, jump in with the diagnostic test. Seriously, just jump in. Sometimes people don't like that advice. They're like, "Oh, but I'm not ready. I'm not used to it. I've never done the LSAT before. I want to watch videos and read books before I take my first test." And the problem is you won't really have context. It's hard to understand like what the videos and books and stuff are talking about before you've actually taken the LSAT and gotten used to it. So just take the diagnostic test and figure out what are your strengths and weaknesses. What are you good at? What are you bad at? Did you have trouble with timing? Right? Did you have trouble with logic games or logical reasoning or reading comp? Right? When you look at things with unlimited time afterwards, can you get the questions right? Or are you still having trouble? Right? Are you having careless errors? These are all really important questions, and these are all things that you won't know until you take the diagnostic test. So in terms of how to analyze diagnostic tests, I'm a big believer in using error logs, which you may have heard of foolproofing. Um, like, you know, Either way, it's basically the idea of if you get a question wrong, put it in the error log. Start with diagnostic test, but this should really be everything. Every question you have trouble with goes into the error log. And there's a few reasons why we want to do this. First, we put in the error log so we can understand how we were supposed to do the question, right? Second, we're doing it so we can analyze what sort of questions we're getting wrong and why, which helps us determine, what to do next. And last, we're doing it so we can review old questions and make sure we still remember how to do them. Because it's sort of a classic thing. People focus on one thing, they forget the last thing. They're working on logic games, they forget how to do logical reasoning. But if you're reviewing questions constantly, that'll help. I have an error log app that I recommend people use called 21st Night. It also has study plans and practice questions and strategies and stuff like that. But if you don't want to use it, that's fine. You can also use a spreadsheet. The important thing is that you're doing this whole thing. You're understanding the questions, like how you were supposed to do them. You're analyzing them. You're reviewing them. So once you've taken the diagnostic test, put the initial stuff in the error log, using this analyze step, do questions. And I'm going to tell you to do questions from Khan Academy because Khan Academy is pretty helpful for this. They have a bunch of questions. They're all organized. And they have reasonable explanations, and it is free. So yeah, use Khan Academy for your LSAT. Um, I would recommend that. Now, when you're doing these questions on Khan Academy, if you get a question wrong, I want you to really focus on how was I supposed to do this, and not just how was I supposed to do this, but how was I supposed to know how to do this? Why were certain techniques used? Why was what I tried the wrong thing to do? These are really important questions to ask yourself. And in the beginning, you can take as much time as you want. Don't worry about speed, right? Just focus on being fluent in the techniques. Your goal is from start to finish, being able to do the whole question, any question, with no pauses or hesitation. You just go straight. Okay, I see this question. I know how to do it. Here's step one, step two, step three, done. Once you're okay on that, speeding up and getting things in the right amount of time is way easier. If you're not cool on that, then speeding up is just going to make you make mistakes faster, or get to the point of the question where you're just sort of doing the whole blank eye stare thing. like way faster. It's not a good idea. So make sure you're confident and that you can be fluent in the techniques first. And once you feel like you've covered your initial weaknesses, or if you don't know what to do next, sorry, that's typo, or if you just want to check your score, take another practice test. You'll find them again on Khan. Then just start again, put in the error log, understand how you were supposed to do the questions, analyze what to do next, and then review the questions. All right. So overall, there are two parts of studying for the LSAT. So one part's like being a marathon runner. And what I mean by that is like marathon runners run marathons by putting miles on the pavement, right? They don't spend all their time like analyzing, oh, what should I do next? Like they do that a little bit, but a lot more of it is just like putting the miles in. You got to run mile after mile. That's how you get good at the marathon. On the LSAT, your equivalent is you need to do questions, you need to get them wrong, and then you need to figure out how to do them correctly. Right? That's your like the core process. If you're doing questions, you're getting them wrong, and you're learning how to do them correctly, you'll be able to score well in the LSAT. If you're not doing that, you won't. If you're not doing questions, you won't do well. If you're getting every question correct, you're either scoring a 180 or you're doing the wrong questions, in which case you're not improving. Right? If you don't think about how should I do them correctly, you're not going to learn from your past mistakes. So your score is not going to improve. So you really need that loop, right? Always going back. Okay, let me do a question, get it wrong, figure out how to do it, go on to the next one. Now, the second part of like studying for LSATs, like being your own coach or maybe being your own tutor, right? It's thinking about, okay, what questions am I getting wrong and right? Why am I getting them wrong and right? How can I get these questions right in the future? Like that sort of thing. A lot of people are try to just like, I get students sometimes who have a great work ethic and they say, I do 6 tests a week. And I say, okay, like, what do you learn from them? And they're like, I don't know. I just do a test every night. And it's like, well, it doesn't sound like you're really learning, right? You're not really like improving. You're not really thinking about what I need to practice. You're just putting in the miles, which is great, but like there needs to be some sense of, thought put into this. What should I be doing next? What do I need to learn? What do I need to practice? You know, you can also just get an actual tutor who will help you with that, like me. But if you can do that for yourself, all the better. So what are your ideal materials? Definitely need Khan Academy LSAT course. Is it perfect? No. But it does have official questions, official tests, explanations, and it's organized. So it's pretty good. It's like the best free resource by far. And if you follow this process with Khan Academy, don't just follow the Khan Academy process. They're not necessarily like, knowing what they're doing. If you follow the process I said above with the Khan Academy stuff, you can totally get a 175. It's going to be a little tricky because Khan Academy is not perfect, but you can. I'd also really recommend an error log. Again, I have my own. It's called 21st Night. But you can also just use a spreadsheet. It's whatever allows you to do this 3-step process, right? Like this, understanding, analyzing, reviewing. Very important. It's going to help a lot. Really helps you understand things. People sometimes get frustrated with it at first, and they're like, "Oh, I feel like I'm wasting time." You're not. You're not. This is like literally will help you so much in terms of analyzing what you're doing. And last, I'm not going to say this is mandatory. I'm not that kind of guy, but I will say it's recommended. I have some really good books. They've helped a lot of people learn stuff on the LSAT. I would recommend it to yourself. You can find them on gumroad.com. Ooh, that is misspelled. Gumroad.com/Trevor Clee. So yeah, I would recommend that. Some people also ask me like, what do I think of 7 Sage? I think it's pretty good. It's a little pricey, but it's pretty good. If you want to do 7 stage, that's also fine. People have good results with that. All right. So what is your overall study plan? I usually say like 100 to 150 hours of, I'm saying hardcore studying here. We could also say like intelligent studying, right? I mean, like, doing that whole being the marathon runner, but also being the coach, that sort of studying. If you do 100, 150 hours, you'll do 20 points. So, if you want to go up 30 points, it might be like 200 hours. So it's a lot. It's a lot. 3 to 4 months spending 20 hours a week. It's a lot. It's a part-time job. It's going to be a big part of your life for a small amount of time, but it's important. I mean, scoring well in the LSAT matters a ton for law school, matters a ton for scholarships. You're going to have to do it. Don't try to cheat this by saying like, oh, I'm going to spend 6 months. I'm going to spend 5 hours a week. Don't do that. People get miserable with that. I see people all the time who get like 4 months in and they're sort of exhausted and they've spent all this, like every week they spend like 2 hours trying to figure out what they did the last week. It's a mess. Don't do that. Spend 3 4 months and pack it all in and just like drill through it, blaze through it. Don't do like a 6 month plan. Um, and like I've bolded this point at the end. Um, if you can explain every question on Khan Academy, you're at a 165 plus. At that point, it's really just like drilling tests, and you'll get to 170 plus. Like, you know, it's that simple. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's simple. Like, if you can explain questions on Khan Academy, if I could wake you up in the middle of the night, I promise I won't do this. I'm not going to go to your house. But if I did, and I woke you up in the middle of the night, and I was like, hey, bud, like, why is the answer to this one A and not B? And you say, instead of saying, who are you and how did you get to my house? You say, oh, because of such and such. You're gold, right? You'll be great. So that's your goal. That's the end goal. So, wherever you're starting from now, your end goal is to get to that point. Let's talk about how to review the LSAT questions. So I talk a lot about being like, oh, your own coach or your own tutor. What does that mean? Well, when you're, get a question wrong, you go back to it. Uh, you need to ask yourself some questions. If it's a reading comp question, you might say, okay, well, first of all, how did the passage fit together? Not what's each part of the passage, not did I understand every single word, but how did, paragraph 1 lead to paragraph 2, lead to paragraph 3? Why did the author put them in there? And that's going to be pretty much your answer to like any main point sort of question or any like purpose sort of question. If you can understand that, you're going to be good. So, understand why the author wrote it the way he did. Is he trying to argue for something? Is he trying to analyze something? Is he trying to, I don't know, evaluate something? All of these are important things. And I have a like reading comp video which goes into this in a lot more depth, but this is sort of the basics. And now if it's a specific question that you had trouble with, what precise the part of the passage did you need to read? How did you know you need to read it? Like, these sorts of questions of like, okay, not just what's the right answer, not even just why is the right answer correct, but really like, okay, how was I supposed to get to the right answer? Right? How was I supposed to, looking at the question, know that this was the part of the passage you know, my answer was supposed to be based on? These sorts of questions of like how is key to reading comp. So every time you get a reading comp question wrong, you need to ask yourself these questions. Now, logical reasoning, if you get a logical reasoning question wrong, you do these questions. How did the reasoning lead to the conclusion? That's every logical reasoning question, right? You have therefore something something because something something, right? How did because lead to therefore? Because I'm happy, therefore I am healthy. How did those lead there? Maybe they don't, in which case, what would they have needed? Like, that's an assumption question or a strengthened question. Maybe how did they not, and what would be a similar one? That's a matching flaw, right? Or how did they do that? And then you just find another one that's a matching structure. Or you might say, okay, how did it lead to its conclusion? And then the conclusion, right? That's a find the conclusion sort of question. All right. And then last up, logic games, everyone's favorite. When you're analyzing your logic games, you think, okay, how did the question link back to the rules? That's always the thing. How did the rules link back to each other? You always have, your question here, your rules here, and your question is always, or at least your answer choices, if they say like which of the following could not be true. But often it's your question goes back to the rules, and then the rules link into each other, and then that brings you to your answer choices. I mean, those sorts of analysis super important. Logic games is always, it's very linear. Sometimes people, they come up with these really elaborate games where they go like A or really elaborate setups. They do A/B and then C/D. You don't need to do that. You just need to say, how did step one lead to step two, lead to step three? How did the question lead back to the rules, lead back to the answer choices? How did we go here to here, right? It's all just formal logic. If this, then that. If this, then that. So these sorts of questions, right? When you're looking back at this, when you're putting these things in your error log, these are the questions you need to ask, right? This is how you understand how these questions work. Now, one question that I get asked a lot, probably because I'm an LSAT tutor, is when should I get it? Well, when should I get LSAT tutoring? Well, get tutoring if you either had trouble with an LSAT or if you feel overwhelmed. You don't have to start with tutoring. You don't even have to get tutoring, right? I didn't get tutoring. I figured this out on my own. There are plenty of people who get 170 plus without tutoring. You can do it yourself. But, you are going to have to put in the work. If you don't get a tutor, you are going to need to be your own tutor. So, I mean, a tutor is in the equation somehow. It might be me, it might be another tutor, it might be you, but you're not going to get away with having zero people thinking about the tutoring aspect, about what you should be studying next, how you should be doing it. All right. Anyways, that's sort of the short version of how I scored a 175, how you could do 175. If you like this video, like and subscribe. I've got a ton of videos on my channel about the LSAT. You can also check out my app. Again, it's 21st Night. You can also check out my books, gumroad.com/Trevor Klee. I'll link these in the description. Anyways, hope you enjoyed. And yeah, like, subscribe, and good luck on the LSAT.